What's up guys, so today is the beginning of a series where I'm going to be buying overpriced tools, or at least tools that I feel are overpriced, and give you guys a review of them to see if it is actually worth the price tag. I'm going to be purchasing these overpriced tools myself in order to hopefully save you guys money on the ones I think that aren't worth it, but also point out the ones that I think are going to be worth it. Again, I bought these for about 65 USD a piece, or just over 90 Canadian a piece. And this is one of the main reasons I held off on buying these, is because for what they are, I feel like it's a little bit much. So today I'm gonna open these and review them. I'll have links in the description for where you can buy these from Amazon, and you can see here they are about $65 each. This right here is the only replica I've ever found of this tool, and it's really only $15 or $10 less, and it looks like these might be a little bit less good in terms of like build quality. So for the extra 10 bucks, I might just go ahead and get the Hakko one. Hakko stuff generally does have really solid build quality in my experience, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it is a little bit expensive in my opinion for what it is. I have not found any sort of clones of this on AliExpress. If you find any, please go ahead and let me know in the comments. So yeah, in Canada, you can see it's about $95 for one or $90 for the clone. So I obviously just went ahead and bought the Hakko ones. So for me in Canada, this hurts. It's about 200 bucks for both. Whereas for most of you guys in the US, it's gonna be about 130 bucks for two of them. So just because of that, my opinion on these might feel a little bit skewed because I felt like I paid more. As you guys have probably seen with a lot of my tool videos so far, I really like to find like high quality, cheaper tools, because I think the price tag of a lot of the name brands are a little bit ridiculous for what they are. And I would argue that about 80% of the time, knockoffs in this space and or similar tools made overseas end up being just as good, if not sometimes better, at a fraction of the price. However, there are definitely some exceptions to that rule where I have found that the more expensive or name brand tool ends up actually being worth the money. So these Hakko Omnivices, I have seen these all around the repair space for a long time now, and I've held off on buying these just because I refuse to spend $80 on what seemed to be an overpriced hunk of metal when I can just hang the motherboards off the edge of the table and seemingly achieve the exact same result. However, the more I saw people use these, the more I do see a reason to get them. So without further ado, let's get one of these open. So right away, this thing is definitely very heavy, which is great, and that seems to be the whole point of them. So here's the Omnivice. There's nothing else in there, and we have a little instruction sheet. It says it's ESD safe and it holds boards. Basically, it's really just a board holder. And the whole point of this is that you unscrew this here, and you can put your PCBs in here. So let's grab a little PCB here, and you can go pretty far with the PCB in there. So it's about, I don't know, about an inch into the holder. And these little grips are actually like padded, so it's not going to damage components. Even if we, grab it on a component like that, it's not going to cause any kind of damage to the component because it is padded here. So this is like the lowest height setting, but you can unscrew this, it looks like, and then adjust it to height 1, 2, 3, or 4. So you just kind of do this sort of thing, and then you can tighten it again. So from the base, this is the lowest it will go, which is about the size of 4 of my fingers here. And the highest it will go is really only about like an inch taller than the lowest setting. So 5 of my fingers. So honestly, like I was hoping that these would go a little bit higher up. I don't know that the height setting from lowest to highest is really that big of a difference in terms of like working space underneath. But what I will say is that like holding it off of the edge of the table like this, it is nice that it does act as like a counterweight, because generally if I do need to work on a larger PCB and hang it off the edge of the table, I usually need to use some kind of counterweight here that's not going to like damage the PCB, but also hold it in place. So I will say that the heaviness of this does really suit that purpose. Unless you're working on smaller PCBs, you definitely are going to have to grab 2 of these. Putting one of these in here feels a little bit sketchy to me. The amount of weight that the PCB is going to put on itself is just not ideal. So another reason why I was holding off on buying these, one of these would maybe be sufficient for a switch motherboard. I can grab one of those here to see if that's the case. And yeah, like this is plenty for like this size motherboard, but anything a little bit bigger than this, I would say like I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable just using one of these, just due to the weight of the PCB itself. And I would say this is like not necessarily even a large board size. This is maybe like a medium board size, and I would not necessarily be comfortable putting this in just one of these, especially on like the corner. This is a donor board, so I don't particularly care if I crack the PCB, but let's just see how comfortable I would be holding this Yeah, no. Like, I can already tell just the weight of the PCB. This is not something you would want to be like working on, especially off of the edge of the table. So again, this is why I needed to get 2 of these, because even for medium-sized boards like this, you're going to need 2 of these. And here I am having bought them because I do see a need for this kind of thing for me personally. So let's try 2 of these, 1 on each side here. Okay, so right away, I'm feeling something that I'm not a big fan of. Something that happens when you put these in the holder is it gets like kind of angled like this because of the way it clamps down on the board, and because there's components, you know, this you can see is at an angle right now. Unless I maybe adjust where this is on the board, maybe I shouldn't put it in as much. Okay, yeah, so maybe that's a better idea, to find areas of the board that just have no components. Because what was happening is when I had it all the way in here, it like angled it upwards. And so when I put the other Omnivise on the other side and tighten it down, these are not like sitting flat. They're kind of like this on the table. Let me try to pick this up and show you. You can see these would not actually sit flat on the table. If this one's sitting flat, this one's angled, and vice versa. So maybe I'm just using these incorrectly and should only grasp like parts of the PCB that are flat, just like the very edge maybe is the move here. And yeah, that works significantly better. You can see, having done that, these are a lot more flat in comparison to each other. And I would totally be comfortable working on this off of the table like this. So yeah, you can see this is exactly how I would be using these, is if I need to, you know, preheat the underside of the board and I don't want to take out my big preheater, I can just use hot air to preheat underneath here and then take things off. This will definitely be nice for things like HDMI ports. You know, if I wanted to do an HDMI port replacement, I do think these will come in handy. And I am realizing that, yeah, grabbing the very edge of the board is the move here, and it does work a lot better that way. I'm definitely starting to see the appeal, because it is really nice having the board lifted off of the table a little bit. Again, I don't think like having this 1 inch higher off of the table is really gonna do a whole lot for me. Like if I adjust these up to the highest setting here, like does this really do anything for me in comparison to the other height setting? Like no. To be honest, like that 1 extra inch off of the table, I don't think is doing really anything for me. I mean, if you guys see the point of being able to raise the PCB like 1 extra inch off of the table, please do let me know, because like without hanging it off of the edge of the table anyways, you're definitely not getting your hot air underneath here. Like maybe you can get your soldering iron underneath here, but no. Even with the iron, I'm definitely not gonna be able to do anything meaningful. So yeah, I think the height setting of these, at least with what a small difference the minimum to the maximum height is, honestly this looks a lot bigger of a difference than it actually is on the table. It seems a little gimmicky to me versus it being all that useful. But I will say, regardless of the height setting, I do see the appeal. It is a really nice way of hanging the PCB off of the table. So the main reason I bought these guys was for working on medium to larger boards like this. For smaller boards like the Switch motherboards, I've just been using this Relife board holder, which I really like. So I'll throw a link to that in the description if you're interested in this. But yeah, for medium to larger boards, I really don't have anything, and I have just been hanging them off of the edge of the table and using some sort of protected counterweight. And this has worked great for me so far, with the exception that it is going to be nice to be able to have the boards elevated from the mat. Whereas with the smaller boards, I can just use this, and this sufficiently, you know, lifts the board off of the table for me. While these mats are heat resistant, when you apply enough heat to them, they do like bubble up and they get all gross and nasty like my last one did. And I don't particularly want to do the same thing to this one. So I went ahead and grabbed these guys. So I will say, for that purpose, for elevating the board off of the table and so that you can work on the board without it moving anywhere, I do definitely see the appeal for these, especially because you can put this in like at any angle, and you can put these around like anywhere. And these are 100% going to be a significantly better design than any of the like magnetic board holders and things I've seen for larger to medium sized boards. I definitely think these are absolutely the way to go, unless you're okay with, you know, burning the surface that you're working on. But even then, you know, when I'm working on boards that are on the table, the board moves around and stuff like that, and you do kind of have to work around that. The angle of the board, especially on these PS5 boards with the power supply connector here, can be a little bit annoying getting a good angle with the microscope in your hands. Now, is having these worth the like 120 US to 200 Canadian that I paid for these. I think if you're only working on small motherboards, like switch motherboard sizes or around that motherboard size where you're comfortable using one of these for it, definitely the $65 price tag is going to be worth it. If you are working on medium to larger size boards and you need 2 of these, that starts to get into the realm of like maybe not worth it depending on how much you're working on stuff. For me, who is working on boards like this nearly every day, I definitely think these are going to be worth it in the long run for me. But in my opinion, for a hobbyist, that definitely starts to teeter on the line of overpriced. So hopefully someone will come up with some clones for these things that are a fraction of the price. And what I can say is that these do feel like really solid build quality, and I can see why people like these a lot. But you know, like if you're a hobbyist, just laying the board off the edge of the table, you know, this works. This has worked for me thus far. I do think it's going to be really nice to have these, but you know, price wise, is this really a $130 difference between just doing this with a counterweight on the PCB? I don't know. I think that really highly depends on the person. But yeah, I hope this was somewhat helpful for any of you guys who are eyeing these. So I've got a few more ideas for tools that in my opinion are a little bit too expensive for what they are, and I'm excited to try those out with you guys in the future. But until then, I appreciate you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.